Let's call it a crossover. Vinyl Verdict, album uncovered, Badfinger fans all over the world, of all generations, uniting to tell the story of this great band. And we thought it'd be interesting to tell our story, how we got interested in some of our experiences over the 21st century.
I'm Conn. I live in New Jersey. I'm also a writer, volunteer writer for a website called Pop Culture Beast, where I review music mostly. I majored in mass communications and King's College in Wilkes-Barre, PA. Albums Uncovered was a show that I did when I was there in the summer, and then when I thought maybe I should do a podcast, and when I couldn't think of any other ideas, I just thought, why not bring back Albums Uncovered?
How did you first discover Badfinger and their music, and what was your journey through the discography?
The Beatles anthology miniseries. I remember watching with my mom for the first time, and we would go tape by tape just so could take that one tape and then take the other. And that's where I got most of my education from, although I liked watching the complete Beatles video more because it was just one video. We didn't, although comparing the two, the Beatles anthology is it's so much more in depth. Anyways, in the next to last, I think it's the next to last episode, they start talking about how Apple Records came to be. Badfinger was one of them. It's a confusing order they went to. I think they went from No Matter What and then to Maybe Tomorrow, which I didn't, which is funny because now I love No Matter What, but that didn't really register to me. Like I just thought, okay, who are these guys? Just okay, they got longer hair. Just then Maybe Tomorrow came up and I just went, what's that? Really just caught my ear. Just who are they? And they put the Ivies. So then a little bit later, my mom and I were looking it up on the internet, and we weren't really finding too many results for the Ivies. I'm just looking all around, and then I think we were in the Bs, and then my mom, I think it might have been my mom, if not that, I might have seen it. I think she might have pointed out, like, well, hey, hang on here. We're getting another prop here. Oh boy, this is not playing very nicely. Here we go. Yeah, I saw this. And then she says, yeah, what about Badfinger? They were signed to the same label. They were like the Beatles. Oh yeah, Badfinger. They were the band that I liked, and the anthology thing. Okay, yeah, I'll get it. And yeah, this did not leave my CD player for quite some time. Oh my goodness, it's got some scratches on it. Badfinger came back into my life again around 2003 when we started getting Netflix by Netflix by mail. My uncle had told us there's this place where you can get DVDs online and you can return them whenever you want. Really? Well, that's a neat concept. Okay, we'll try this out. So, one of the first movies I remember checking out was The Magic Christian because I wanted to check that out because I just heard it came out on DVD. So I checked that out and I got that 1997 Badfinger video, that little documentary. I can't remember. I think it was just called Badfinger from 97. And then that got me back into the band, and that had a bunch of other footage. This is before YouTube, so this was like just watching all this footage of them, and just got me back into the band. And I still liked Badfinger, but I just didn't want to buy these other albums that were cost 20 or 30 bucks. It just didn't. And after that, I got the Without You book from the library. And by that point, iTunes was a thing, and I saw that an album like Wish You Were Here, which was some 22, 23, 30 bucks to get as an import. You could have downloaded to your computer for 7.92. And I just went, okay, all right, yeah, I'll snatch that up. I just thought, how crazy would it be to do a Badfinger book report? So into I probably still have it in the basement. And so yeah, and then around that time I interviewed Bob, and then by the time before I left for camp, I had all the albums. So, but again, it's always been hard to find anybody who likes Badfinger that is of my age range. If I mention Badfinger, you'll be lucky if they know a few songs.
And then I came along. So maybe I'll jump in here to my side of it a little bit. It's similar to the challenge of trying to find intelligent life in the universe. And that was kind of one of the strategies I took with this was just broadcasting out the passion and seeing what pops up, and it's been great to connect and talk about all of this stuff. So my journey is much more direct, which is both of my parents being big Badfinger fans and actually kind of initially really falling for each other at some Joey Mullen concerts in the 80s. So I kind of view myself as a little bit of a product of their love for Badfinger. And My dad is an OG first generation fan, of which, there aren't too many anymore. So he actually saw them in 72 and 73. I won't tell his story, I'll tell my story, which is that growing up, by the time I was 6 or 7 or 8, I was already a Beatles fan. My grandparents influenced me to buy him the Beatles One album for Father's Day. You remember when that was like on every TV commercial? Like it was every commercial break, even on like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. Beatles One,
Yeah.
21 number one hits for the low, low price of, I don't know, 9.99 or 13.99 or something. So I
Mhm.
got it for him, and I think I ended up listening to it more than him. Became a big Beatles fan. Badfinger stuff was less accessible, and I remember my dad playing. I think because the anthology already we already had the anthology discs, and I remember "Come and Get It." I really liked that song, and he would play me the Badfinger "Come and Get It," and I didn't like it as much. I didn't really, it didn't sound like Paul McCartney, and so it took a bit longer for that to latch on. And I remember the CDs he had were he had No Dice Straight Up and the best of, not the very best of that you have. And I think he had a Warner Brothers best of too. He had Shine On, I think, which was like the first one of the first CDs.
Okay.
So there was a random smattering of tracks, really. It was also less, the Beatles had such a clean discography, especially with the UK remasters. It's like you have each album, and you can go to Best Buy or Tower Records and buy Magical Mystery Tour, and you know exactly what's on there. Badfinger, I didn't really understand. You couldn't even get half of the albums on CD, so it was hard to know what you were missing. And in seventh grade, you actually reminded me of this. I totally forgot about this. I did a whole project on Badfinger. It was like a poster board and like the history of the band and some of the songs. And I got to find that. I bet you I still have that in my parents' garage or something. And then in the early days of the internet, got kind of addicted to eBay. I like probably pretty young, 12, 13. Just the idea that like there was this like vast marketplace of all these things that could make my dad so happy. And I would like save up lunch money and just bid on random stuff. Like I would bid on, I think I got the German imports of the Warner Brothers albums, and then I didn't know the difference between official and unofficial releases. So anything with Badfinger on it, I bought. And so I think I got a couple live recordings and different demos and stuff. And I just surprised my dad with them each time. Like he'd pick me up from school and I'd have another Badfinger CD that we'd go home and we'd listen to in the car ride home. And then he would just be like, "Where did this come from?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's from Richmond, Virginia, or Luxembourg, or wherever." And I guess I always felt like I had inherited this like golden era of Badfinger stuff in the 90s. I mean, neither of us were really that cognizant of what was going on in the 90s, right? So we kind of just like come to consciousness early 2000s, and everything is on CD somewhere. We have these ways of accessing it on the internet. We have the book, the Matavina book Without You, and the documentaries and the VH1 behind the music, and infinitely more than existed a decade before that. And so I think I was just kind of taking inventory of all that and trying to catch up on it.
Well, I mean, there's already a couple points that you're hitting upon here. I mean, I remember having it very methodically planned out of
I
just
remember I remember Mike Gibbons passing because that was right around there too,
I
right?
think that too might have been a thing for me that wanted me to get back into the music. Yeah, when I heard that Mike had died, I just went, oh wow, it's just Joey now. So that might that might have tempted me into buying more stuff.
It's half a century ago. Like,
I
this
mean,
the main studio albums.
mm,
So on the one hand, I agree with you that it's like, okay, yeah, people just want to listen to current music. It's also pretty unprecedented in pop culture. Nobody at that time was listening to, I mean, it would not even be big band music. It was like, well, the Treaty of Versailles was 50 years before that, basically. So there is an incredible staying power. Now, what's interesting about Badfinger, I know we've talked about this, how much of that is the same generation listening to that music versus people like us who are appreciating it, right? With the Beatles, I think that's the case, that there are actually a significant group of people, especially in other countries and stuff, who just latch on to this music rather than anything being created today. And that was not the case 50 years ago. So
One my first semester, I was in a course called From Woody to Woodstock, which is what it sounds like. Woody Guthrie to Woodstock. So that's how far the course went. And it kind of took me by surprise as to how much they knew about. I thought they knew almost all about the Altamont show. They just went, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They got Hell's Angels to be the security and people were getting hurt and beat up, and then one of the angels stabbed a guy and just oh, they know about this it's just I mean it's I think by that age, I think by the time that they're in you come to appreciate or maybe they took the class because they were already interested in the music. But that's when I was really like taken aback that I've been talking about this for so many years and now here's people talking about it.
So I didn't do any research for this. This is a fun conversation that we're just trying to have, right? Someone can chime in if fact check us if we're missing something. Or I do remember everyone talking about, Badfinger songs being in films. I remember The Departed, I think was the first big one I heard about that Baby Blue was in there.
Yeah,
I wasn't allowed to see it, but I remember hearing there
same.
was a Badfinger film and a Martin Scorsese film. Huge gap where there was nothing. Where were you at the end of 2013 when you watched the Breaking Bad finale?
I think I was sitting in it would have been my senior year in college. People were starting to post about the Breaking Bad finale, and that got me so excited. Just finally, for a band that's had so many missteps, so many poor decisions, and so much bad luck that they're immortalized in a show that's now considered to be one of the greatest shows of all time, even now, some 12, 13 years later, after the finale aired. Not so much a happy ending, but I mean, it leaves things a little bit happier than they were before, definitely. I don't know what your
It
experience
did.
is
It
with.
started. I think it started a new era in terms of their exposure and just kind of a more modern approach rather than in general like a lot of the Apple stuff and the Beatles. Right? There had been this big remastering campaign. September 2009, right, was the big remastering campaign of all the Beatles stuff, Beatles rock
Yep.
band all at once. And then Badfinger and the other Apple acts, I think maybe it was the following year, something around there before I went to college, I remember. So it felt like, okay, we fixed the backlog is good. Everything's now we got all the bonus tracks we're ever going to officially get. And then boom, out of nowhere, then we were launched into this other era where they were actually featuring it in new intersections of pop culture, and maybe there were even going to be new recordings. So yeah, going back to my experience then was very different than yours because I became a Breaking Bad fan actually earlier that year, and knowing that basically I waited for that final season premiere. What we did, because I was living with a big group of friends in this house, it was my junior year of college, and we would have a premiere where we would watch it on this big screen TV and have people over, like everyone from the neighborhood that we were friends with would come over and watch it, and I would find ways to get these episodes that no one else had. We didn't have cable or anything. We were college students. So found ways, and I would watch it pretty much live. And the way we did that back in the day was you would plug in your laptop with, I think it was HDMI. It might have even been VGA. I think it was HDMI. And we would cast it and watch it. Yeah. So we were watching the final episode, and we knew something had to happen, right? If you're a Breaking Bad fan too, I mean, there's so much suspense going into it. It's like, how can this resolve in an episode? And it really doesn't, right? But that final scene is very symbolic. And then Baby Blue starts playing, and my heart jumps out as if, well, it jumped out thinking something is like somebody must have hit the space bar. Like, why is my iTunes playing? This is so embarrassing. Like, this is the critical moment. It's like you're watching like the final play of the Super Bowl and you change the channel. It's like someone hit the remote. This is so embarrassing that Badfinger music is playing because we're supposed to be watching Breaking Bad. And I like stood up and then I was like, oh, wait a second. This is in the actual episode. And it's clear that it's the final scene. And I just lost it. I don't think I could fully even take it in. I remember just being completely shocked by it. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. The show doesn't have that many crossovers with other music. I don't think I knew any other song ever featured in Breaking Bad. So the idea that this was actually played in what at the time was my favorite show in the final episode, it was crazy. I called my dad up right after. I do know that he watched all of Breaking Bad because of that. So it works the other way too. It's not just people becoming Badfinger fans, but we made some people Breaking Bad fans. That was probably the proudest day to be a Badfinger fan. Everyone was talking about that song the next day and downloading it. But yeah, that was a big day. I don't know that we're ever going to top that. It's obviously it's in the Godzilla movie. It was in the Holdovers last year. I mean, they're featured in more and more advertisements and films, but that seems like it was peak saturation. And also getting Baby Blue the attention it deserved, because that always felt like of the hits, right? It was the second one issued on the album. It cracked the top 20, but it wasn't a top 10 hit, or it wasn't released in Europe, I guess. So it always felt like the single that didn't really get the same level of attention. To your point, I mean, there was a correcting effect to that. And I think that's a big part of being a Badfinger fan, is like they're very underappreciated, tragically so, right? And so we try to make up for that with our own personal obsession of them. But I think one of the goals is to just get them the proper amount of recognition in the world.
I get more out of Baby Blue being used in that last scene than I do out of watching the entire show. The show for me was just, eh. I think it being used and just people being interested in that brief second. It's funny, I like The Sopranos, but I do not like For the Life of Me Journey. I do just too AOR for me, way too commercial. Although the way that the Don't Stop Believing is used is pretty nice, and it does leave it, ambiguous as to what happens in the end.
Those windows that are so rare, and I don't know that either of us are. I mean, our goal is to do it, but to actually reach people who aren't fans and convert them into fans. And that Breaking Bad thing was probably the biggest window that we've seen in our lifetime. I hope there's more like that. But I remember, I was going to mention also one of my earliest memories. I went to a film camp where and we made stop motion films on like these cameras. Like, I don't know, was it elementary school, maybe going on middle school? And I snuck in my I don't know, we did some stupid, it was like some South Park-esque animated thing. And then the song that I told my friends we got to put on there, Three-Time Loser from Say No More. I don't know why. I think I like the delay effect or whatever, or the chords or something. And I have that. And I put it in a film, and I got 20 kids to listen to Three-Time Loser. And so it was like that on steroids, right? Clearly, I know they say Vince Gilligan was a fan and everything, but it's just finding any opportunity to broadcast that music to a bigger audience is really important.
I mean, they were one of the first things I wanted to do as a show. I mean, I had an earlier version of Primer Review on Badfinger, but I hadn't really fine-tuned Primer Review. The one story I will tell you, I've been talking about my show Albums Uncovered. I'll buy these. So yeah, the money I made from doing Albums Uncovered were on. So it's kind of like they're all connected. So because I didn't have the money to get them in 2010.
Got them all at once.
When I saw them, why?
Yeah.
Why do it? The 1991, they sound fine. But then I had the money, and I just thought, let me add it all up here. I could get the Badfinger remasters if I wanted to.
There's going to be another generation that talks about how they just downloaded these online. At least we have some stories like this. So we'll end it here for today. We explored a little bit of our experience, and more collabs soon. And check out Albums Uncovered.
Check out Albums Uncovered if you want to find me on Twitter at Aaron_Conn. And you can also look at Pop Culture Beast.
Great chatting with you, Aaron. Thanks for coming on. And let us know in the comments, what was your Badfinger origin story?